Hey everyone, my name is Andre from Celluloid Consomme, and I'm back again with another Wild Eye Visual Vengeance release. And this one is surprising and actually really exciting to see because it's something I don't think anyone has ever thought would come out anytime soon. And that has to do with a lot of different things. So I think we're going to get into that here because I have here with me filmmaker, writer Eric Swelstad with Heartland of Darkness.
Strange things been happening around here.
Reverend, I can explain everything.
Are you people?
We're from Copperton. The town's been taken over by this fanatical reverend who's leading a group of Satanists. So they're gonna kill my daughter, you stupid son of a bitch!
Were you followed? I'm not sure.
The new order shall emerge, and the feeble non-believers shall bleed.
There's nothing you can do.
Nobody move.
I've got to prove that you are one sick bastard.
My God does have mercy, but I don't.
They must be integrated.
Wouldn't you want to be one of us? Control your own destiny? Dominate others? See your dreams and fantasies come to life before your very eyes?
I've got to go.
I want this.
You rock now.
Who's next?
Very nice, Mary.
AKA Blood Church. There's two different titles, but Heartland of Darkness is the title on the box for Visual Vengeance, and super happy to have you, Eric.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah. I guess let's start with the title, because in the film itself, we're going with Heartland of Darkness, and you got these cool graphics and everything after the opening credits. Like, you have the title, and then, like, there's a giant cross knife that comes in that forms the T, and I thought it was super cool. But I have to say, Blood Church, although it's a much more generic name, has a really nice ring to it. So I wonder if, was that like a producer, creator thing, or did you just like come up with something else as like a maybe working title or like a B, like Plan B title?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, by the way. The film was originally shot under the name Fallen Angels back in 1989. And we had every intention of finishing the film back then, but we ran out of money, sadly. So the film, in the early 90s, we were looking for a distributor, and we found a distributor in Florida that is now long out of business, but they thought of the idea of calling it Blood Church. Okay. And we were like, oh yeah, that's kind of it's got blood. It's in a church. That kind of fits. And people really liked the title Blood Church, but I didn't like the title very much. So, fast forward to a few years down the road, we're finishing the film, and there's been two Fallen Angels that had already come out. It was an Asian film, and there was a Showtime series. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. And then Blood Church I didn't like, so I came up with the idea of Heartland of Darkness. And, it's got elements, it's set in the heartland, it's a horror film, it's got certain things that kind of come together. So we settled on that title, and people have liked it, which is really cool.
Yeah, and the heartland part of the film, you definitely get that feeling of small town, like the other side of the close-knit community, which is the wary and like almost accusatory feeling. It's almost like a Western trope, with the main character moving his newspaper business to the small town, and they're basically just renovating what looks like a spooky, haunted office, and no one likes them at all. There's like various scenes where his staff is like going out and about doing stuff around town, like the hardware store and the library. There's a fun little scene there where one of his employees is trying to look up some information on the town, local goings on in history, but there's so many books that have like redacted lines in there, and she's asking like, why are these lines blacked out? And then the librarian is like, it's to protect you. So there's some like almost I would feel a little comfortable saying that maybe you had a little bit of inspiration from like some Stephen King works, like the It story with the unexplainable menace that's like taking over this town. It's an internal mob mentality when it comes down to it. I don't want to spoil where that leads, because from the title Blood Church, I think it gives you a little bit more of that picture, but just to be fair about it, especially since this is a movie that I guess you guys started working on it in 88, 89.
Yeah, 89.
And then there was a famous 37-minute work print that came out. So everything had been shot by then, but hadn't been cut together, edited, mastered, and everything until now, actually. The pastiches work really well. I was extremely surprised by how effective those practical effects are, too.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, after the first like cold open murder.
Yeah, his name is Scott Simonson, and he's outstanding. Scott Simonson did a feature film right before this one that we all kind of got trained on, and it was like the groundbreaker, and that was a movie called Beyond Dream's Door, which is great. And Scott Simonson, yes, oh good, that's good. Scott Simonson did all the creature effects and the blood from that film. Yeah, so we were all schoolmates at Ohio State, so I asked him, would you be willing to do this satanic action film? And he was like, oh yeah, he was totally in. So he did all of the practical effects, the blood, the dead bodies, the torsos. He did all that stuff, including that great scene where they find the victim of the first opening, David.
Yeah.
And they find him in a
guts just spilled out.
And his guts have spilled out. He's been eviscerated. So Scott, we said we wanted to look as realistic as possible. So he went to an actual slaughterhouse. And he went in there and got a bunch of intestines and livers and everything from animals, and he put that into a trash bag, took it to his house, left it in the garage for the weekend. It was 100 degrees in Ohio, and then the following Monday took it out there, and it stank so bad. And he poured it all over the actor who's there, and it had to look realistic, and it does, because those are real guts. Yeah. And you can even see some of the steam rising, because it was warm. It was gross, but it was a lot of fun. And he was really into doing the practical effects. That was kind of his specialty.
Yeah, and there's also another connection with Beyond Dream's Door. I believe you casted Nick Baldassare.
You bet. Our lead Nick Baldassare was from Beyond Dream's Door. Our DP cinematographer Scott Spears was also from Beyond Dream's Door. Yeah. And the musician, the guy, the composer for this film, was the director of Beyond Dream's Door, Jay Wolfel.
Yeah, I love the way that Jay Wolfel approaches the scores that he works on, because I had seen Beyond Dream's Door a few years ago before Heartland of Darkness, and it's interesting how when you see one movie by a bunch of people that you previously have never heard of before make such a good impression on you. For me, Beyond Dream's Door was like absolutely like superb, low budget, just maniacal, dangerous filmmaking. It's like
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, it deserves its own like place in the sun. And when I started watching Heartland of Darkness, I started reading like the opening credit titles and names. And then I started recognizing some names. I'm like, where have I heard of this person before? Yeah. And then I looked it up and was like, oh, these guys worked on Beyond Dream's Door. And then like before the movie actually had a chance to really start, I was already just so hyped up and like ready to see what Heartland of Darkness was going to bring. And I have to say that immensely entertaining. And, you know, there's some rules in like the fictional versions of movie worlds where, you know, some things can be totally grounded, some things can be disconnected from reality, from any degree, really. But coming from that creative center of Beyond Dream's door, this seems of a feather of that school of like filmmaking and how horror in a community can like branch out using the themes of religion. Not to get too spoilery, but it's the catalyst for everything that happens in the movie. I have to say the priest's underlings wearing sunglasses in the dark. One of them threatens a hardware store owner with a nutcracker. I wouldn't change a single thing about this movie, honestly.
Wow, that's great. Thank you.
Mostly because I didn't make it, but also because I'm, you know, just giving you praise for just the sharp directing that I see on screen. It seems like every performer knows exactly what they're supposed to get out of their characters in each interaction, and even if some of like the dialogue might not be the most developed part of it, it's they still use it to an advantage where it still gives off this eerie, campy feeling, and it really works for the larger experience of it all, because there's some points where it'll take you by surprise. You'll probably laugh your ass off. The conclusion is genuinely thrilling. Like,
oh, great.
I had found out that a couple different parties were contacting you about financing the film.
Yeah, so we to get the movie off the ground, we had to form what's called an S corporation. The movie was made at The Ohio State University in Central Ohio, right after Beyond Dream's Door. Beyond Dream's Door was the flagship film that came out right before ours. We were a year later, but we were all friends and students at Ohio State. So we raised the money through an S corp, and you know we could buy and sell shares. People, you know, dentists, doctors could buy a piece of the film, and that's how we originally did it. But the one thing about independent filmmaking is that getting the money to make the film, to shoot the film, that's not the problem. The problem is finishing the film, is getting it done and finished. That can be released to the public. So we had lots of money to shoot the film, lots of money to get everything off the ground. But as we were shooting it, we quickly realized we didn't have enough money to finish the film. And back then, editing was, you had to transfer the 16 millimeter color negative to digital or videotape. It's called digibeta. You had to transfer it to videotape, and then you would go to a tape machine, and you would edit on a tape machine like videotape,
right?
And then you would master that, etc. So all that stuff cost thousands and thousands of dollars back then. Today, you still have to transfer it to digital, but you can edit on your computer. You can edit anywhere you want. So we had to wait for the technology to really change, develop, and come down before we could finally get the film to be finished like it is today. But that took a series of steps, and we had to wait until we could do that. And the cost back then was enormous. Today it's a little bit cheaper, but there are still, you know, challenges today to go through when you shoot film. Still that problem.
So then I'm just wondering if I heard this correctly. Was at some point Jim Wynorski offering like financial services to help with then like transferring to the videotape for the master?
You know, I love Jim, and I'm not too sure on that myself. I mean, I'm not a producer on the film. I'm just the writer director.
Okay.
But I'm not. He may have contacted another producer on the. We had a couple producers, and he might have contacted that producer, who sadly has passed, and he may have talked with him about getting the money. I wouldn't be surprised, because Jim's a great guy, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he offered to help us get across the finish line. At that point, the film was taken to Florida, like I mentioned before, and a distributor tried to finish the film down there. We really thought the film was going to come out as Blood Church, but they went bankrupt. So then the film sat around for all these years, and I would go to festivals and conventions and everything, and people would say, "Oh, that's the guy that did, you know, what was called then Blood Church," and they'd say, "When's it going to be finished?" And I'd say, "I don't know. We'd like to get it done." And then eventually, like I said, the technology became more affordable, and I was able to do things like transfer it, edit it, and stuff like we do today. So yeah, we finally got across the finish line.
Okay. Now, was Wild Eye the party that helped you actually finally bring that in, transfer it, and then cut it together?
No, we were doing that before we worked with Wild Eye, but they put the final package together to release it, and we were thrilled. Wild Eye came right up and said, "Here's what we want to do for our new label, Visual Vengeance," and we were very happy with what they presented to us for what they saw, how the film should be released. And again, you know, we're thrilled with the release. It's great. It's got lots of bonus features, a lot of cool extra stuff for the fans. It's great. So, and yeah, you mentioned that early cut. We even put that early cut on here too.
Oh,
so
cool.
People can, they can actually find.
They can see what people have been watching for all these years.
And most of that was Linnea's scenes, because people were really, you know, the film was called the Lost Linnea Quigley film, and they really wanted to see her. So we transferred all of her scenes, and we cut those scenes, and that became the demo reel for the film. That for many years, that's all people ever saw of it.
Okay, yeah, because I haven't seen the work print myself, but I read a lot of reviews of people saying, like, I don't know how this movie is going to work because this is pretty much all Linnea Quigley, and like, you know, that's nice and all, but like, I wonder what's actually going on in this movie. And I'm curious to see how the work print is put together versus the finished feature film, and also how unique it is to have been able to see the finished feature film before having seen the work print. So it'll be kind of an interesting.
That will be cool, and I think people, again, the bonus features on this, you get a chance to see that early work print, that early, you know, it was basically a pitch reel, and they could see that, and they could see what scenes we thought we'd include on that, and I believe Visual Vengeance put a commentary track that I did for that one too. So you actually get 3 commentary tracks, and one of them is with that. The only video that ever came out was that demo reel, that first one that you were mentioning it, and then eventually the whole film was put together, and then people can see now with this release the early stuff versus the final stuff, how it's cut together, how it flows, and what we did to raise money to finish the film. That's all there between the two.
Visual Vengeance has been really good about just including at least like some really detailed commentaries with the filmmakers, and I mean, this one is no exception for me in saying that this is probably one of my most anticipated like actual physical releases here, and you know, it's super rare now when we actually get it's a new release of basically a brand new film, but something that has been like locked away, almost like a
time capsule. I've heard called a time capsule.
A time capsule that is like something that is completely and totally of its era, but just like such a delayed release that it kind of feels super refreshing, especially for people who may have grown up in the video store era where SOV movies were filling up the shelf space because they just, you know, video mom and pop stores just needed something to bring to their community that wasn't all just like the super expensive movies that every other store was renting out because they cost so much money.
Yeah, we shot the film for that, exactly that. We shot the film for the blockbuster home video crowd because, you know, again, I was getting my master's degree, and we thought, well, how do we get a film out there? We all want to be filmmakers. So back then, you're right, you could shoot. They really weren't shooting too much on video. They were mostly shooting film and then transferring it to video.
Yeah, like.
But I know Visual Vengeance has titles coming out that are literally SOV. I mean, and those, man, good luck. Those are tough because
Yeah.
the quality is a lot less than film, but they're still getting out there, which is really the point of doing all this.
Yeah, and that's something I think the nomenclature for SOV, where even though it literally stands for shot on video, not all of them are. They're just mostly seen as these things that have only existed on video. Even going back to another favorite SOV in quotes filmmaker, Tim Ritter, who mostly has shot all of his stuff on like 8 or 16 millimeter, just for the sake of argument. It's a kind of like a catch-all term that I think isn't as technically true anymore, but
Sure.
it definitely gives you that expectation of something like a low-budget genre film. Like if you say SOV horror, that kind of gives someone a pretty good idea of like what to expect. Mostly in scope, but sometimes not always.
Right.
There are some filmmakers out there that have made some really like wide-ranging epics, and honestly, I would go so far as to say that your film here, Heartland of Darkness, it feels very much like that earlier mention of It, like the amalgamation of that plus maybe a little bit of Salem's Lot, but without the vampires.
Oh, cool.
Just still heaping on praise, but it's just a really, really fun. It's almost noirish in a way.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of create this. I'm a big fan of the '70s paranoia films, and so we wanted to kind of create that feeling about the film. Is that you don't know who to trust, you feel like the world's closing in on you, and of course, not to give anything away, but when it comes personal for Paul and they take his daughter, it's like the paranoia is real, and he really does realize, oh my God, they're really willing to do anything to get what they want. And that's when the film's even more heightened, is because if somebody's going to come at you and they're willing to do anything to hurt you, what else? I mean, what would they stop at? Well, nothing.
Yeah.
So that whole paranoia thing was a big theme in this.
Yeah, and then there's also that, well, now I have nothing to lose kind of mentality.
Yeah.
In some ways, very like Manchurian Candidate. To just to cite another possible inspiration, I think that I noticed during the movie.
Definitely. No, you're right. I mean, the idea with the priest is that he's got such a, and I love that you compared to Manchurian Candidate. He's got such a hold on the people in the town. I mean, literally everybody is blind obedience to him, and they're just willing to follow him and do anything that he says. They're willing to kill, to be killed, because they're just so driven by him. And the idea of the power and everything that goes with that. That was definitely a planned theme that we wanted to do with him. And he's this, megalomaniac leader that just controls all these people under him. And the actor, Nick Baldassare, who you mentioned was also in Beyond Dream's Door, he plays him with such ferocity. I mean, he's so intense. People have compared his performance kind of like to Shakespeare. And when I was doing the script, I wrote the script just for him.
Oh, cool.
He and I were actors together in some Shakespeare stuff. And I said, man, I got to work with you, on a project, on a film project. So I wrote the part really for him because he's so great. And he just chews it up. He just does great. He takes no prisoners, and it's just so much fun to work with him. And he was great.
Yeah, I love his early scenes in the church when he convinces, also in quotes, like he's really good at persuading. Persuading was the word I was looking for earlier. Where he has the newspaper staff in church on that next Sunday, and then he just like weaponizes a quote from the Bible, which no one does. Right. But yeah, he just really like menacingly turns that idea of like a community that builds together and stays together into like his own personal like army.
Yeah, there was an influence of Jim Jones, and the cult leaders. I mean, you could see that in there. We were looking at a whole bunch of stuff that was in the news. I react as a writer. I react to the world around me. I look at what's going on, themes, ideas, And certainly there's a little bit of Jim Jones in Donovan. It's obvious that his followers are willing to do anything for him, and the women are willing to be pregnant, so he has babies that he can. I mean, that's some hardcore stuff, but that's all from the Jim Jones stuff, really, and the other culture.
And it's that layer of social commentary that goes underneath a lot of horror films that people still don't realize is one of the backbones of the genre, because like you can't really make a horror film or a genre film that would be compared to horror that doesn't have anything to say. If it's just something that like you're just making it to film an excuse for like blood or boobs or maybe a creature, but even then, if you have a creature in your movie, there's a reason for it, and there has to be a thematic influence for that. But yeah, you definitely get that feeling while watching Heartland of Darkness. It's very apparent, and it's never like hammering it into your head over and over again, because there's so many different facets to it. Least of all, Linnea Quigley's character being this like right-hand person to the priest, basically is like a recruiter, but she's a teacher at the school, which is an even more sinister implication there.
It's absolutely. She's a teacher. She's playing a witch. When I cast Linnea, I wrote the part just for Linnea, and she was like, "How did you know I always wanted to play a witch?" I was like, "I didn't, but that's awesome." But yeah, she's like the school teacher that's got all the really creepy stuff about famous cult leaders and everything. And Linnea just chews it up. She's great. She was great to work with, and she was terrific.
Yeah, if anyone watching the movie can like spot her lesson plans on the chalkboard during those classes, it's really fun. I recommend like pausing it and just reading the stuff on there.
That's great. It's great you noticed that. That's
cool. And that was another thing. Some of Linnea's projects around that time, I know that she was demanding like a certain like stipend of funds to appear in certain films, and she kind of had like this reputation of getting producers that would kind of just be in like a Arrested Development hell, where a lot of the movies that she would go out to shoot for they would kind of have this tendency to never come out. And a lot of people have cited Heartland of Darkness as being one of those films, and now we know that this is not one of those films anymore. But were you aware of like that rumor? Or
I was aware. I've seen Linnea half a dozen times at conventions, and she'd remember me and give me a hug. And she'd say, "When's it going to come out?" Hopefully soon. And the fans, though, man, that was the big thing. The fans were, as soon as they'd see me, they'd say, "When?" And so it had become legendary as the unreleased film of Linnea. And I know there's others, but we were like, because we were done back in the 80s. She had done Return of the Living Dead a few years before ours, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. So she'd done a lot of films then that were already out. People knew who she was. So we were really hoping to get our film out too at the same time. Didn't happen. But over the years, we kept in touch, and her fans kept asking, "When's it going to come out?" Until finally it did.
22nd it comes out, so you can get it in time for Thanksgiving, which honestly wouldn't be a bad time to watch this either, especially if your family members are going to make you watch something you don't want to watch. Why not return the favor? Plus you could also put on any of the commentary tracks if no one just wants to give it any like any attention at the dinner table, or at least
got lots of things to enjoy with this. That's right.
Obviously this movie becomes highly recommended for me. This is probably going to be another one of those like October rewatches. It's becoming a thing with Visual Vengeance releases that I will kind of immediately love them, especially if it's something that I hadn't seen before, or if it's like a release that I've seen before but like on a really crappy videotape, which I've been lucky to be able to access. That being said, I just want to thank you again for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
This was great. Thank you, Andre.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I had a blast. Is there any plans for like a theatrical like premiere? Maybe like,
We
talk to
would
Linnea?
like to do that. You know, there's talk about one in Vegas where our star Nick Baldassare is currently. There's one about in Vegas.
Ooh.
We'd like to do one in Ohio and maybe LA where I am. So it's in the works. We haven't finalized anything yet, but we sure would like to do that. I know there's a lot of interest.
Okay. If you end up doing one in LA, I have some friends down there, and I will let them know, sight unseen, to just buy a ticket and go.
Oh, that'd be
Because
great.
It's absolutely
Thank you.
worth it. And yeah, buy the DVD, Blu-ray DVD.
Blu-ray DVD.
And yeah, support true independent filmmaking, shot on video, shot on film to video, however you prefer to call it. But thanks for watching.